Hello, Towns troops. I wonder what's going on with that dog in the last chapter. He just kind of shows up out of nowhere. So I wonder if the dog will show up again and who it belongs to. I wonder. Let's see. Here's chapter 6 from The Secret Garden. Chapter 6, Making Friends. That night, Mary was woken again by the same high-pitched wailing. She listened, open-eyed in the dark. Was it the wind, like Martha had said? Or was it a ghost of one of the soldiers who had died here? Remembering the fear she had felt the night before, she pulled the coverlet over her ears and stayed in bed. When Mary woke in the morning, she sat up to see Martha kneeling beside her fireplace, arranging a layer of paper on the ashes. A tray with more porridge was set on her table. "Hello, Martha," she said. "Miss," Martha said coldly. Mary remembered the noises in the night. "Were you here when the soldiers were, Martha? Did you work in the hospital?" Martha didn't reply. She just kept laying the fire. Mary realized that Martha was still upset with her. She wondered how she could get back the friendly Martha from the day before. Climbing out of bed, she knelt beside her. "Is there an order to how you put the fire together?" she asked. "Yes, miss," not looking at her as she started to put the coal on the layer of paper. Mary picked up a piece of coal. Its black coating stained her fingers, and the dust dropped onto the rug. "Oh, miss, please don't," exclaimed Martha, sounding exasperated. "You're going to spoil the rug and your dress, and it'll be me who has to clean both." Mary sighed. Helping Martha did not seem to be making the maid any friendlier. She gave up. She sat back on her heels and changed the subject. "Martha, do you hear noises at night in this house?" "I'm sure you don't know what you're talking about," said Martha. "If you hear noises, then just turn over and go back to sleep. That's the best thing to do." Mary was certain that Martha knew more than she was admitting. She watched as Martha lit the fire in silence and then went to the door without saying another word. Anger and unhappiness rushed through Mary at the thought of being left on her own again. "I didn't ask to be here, you know," she burst out angrily. Martha looked back. "And Mr. Craven didn't ask to take you in, but he did all the same," she said. And then she was gone, shutting the door behind her. Mary stamped her foot. It seemed like the one person who might have talked to her in all of this dismal place now didn't want to. She glared at the closed door, feeling lonelier than she had ever felt in her life. Later that morning, Mary put on her outdoor boots, a new warm blue coat, and a matching hat, and she paid another visit to the kitchen. "Mrs. Pitcher," she said to the cook, "you gave me sandwiches for my yesterday lunch. I need the same meat in my sandwiches again today, please." She hesitated. "Please?" She remembered her manners. Mrs. Pitcher gave her a surprised look and then nodded and took a loaf of bread from the counter. "What is the meat you put inside the sandwich?" Mary asked curiously, watching her. "Spam," said Mrs. Pitcher. "Spam?" echoed Mary, trying out the unfamiliar word. The cook chuckled. "Yes, spam." She quickly made the sandwiches. "Now, go on. Away with you," she said, shooing her out of the kitchen. Mary pushed the sandwiches into her leather bag and hurried outside. She had a plan. No one in the house seemed to want to be her friend, but she had a feeling that maybe there was someone or something in the garden who would. What she would really have liked to be doing was exploring the upper floor of the house and solving the mystery of the night cries. The strange look Martha had given her that morning when she had mentioned the noises in the night had convinced her that something was being kept from her, and Mary was determined to find out what it was. But she didn't dare risk exploring and Mrs. Medlock finding her. She wasn't sure what the housekeeper would do if she found Mary poking about, but she didn't want to find out. "I'll wait until tonight," she thought, "when everyone else is asleep." In the meantime, she was going to concentrate on something else. She hurried to where she had eaten her lunch the day before. Feeling very daring, she unwrapped the sandwich and took out the spam. She placed it in the same exact spot where she had thrown it before. Looking around hopefully, she retreated to the tree stump and sat down to wait. Where was the dog? She was sure it would be here, and even a dog as a friend would be better than nothing. She waited and waited. "Come on," she whispered. "Please come." She heard a bark and saw the shaggy brown dog standing in the bushes. "There you are," she said, smiling as it trotted out and gobbled the meat up, watching her at the same time. "Hello," Mary said. She felt strange. She'd never talked to a dog before, but she decided that its eyes looked cleverer than those of many humans that she had met. "What's your name, then?" The dog gave her a short woof. Mary felt a flicker of anxiety. "Are you diseased?" There were some dogs in India that had a nasty sickness called rabies. They barked and foamed at the mouth and bit people, but this dog didn't seem to look like it was dangerous. "Well?" The dog barked again. "You see, I have no idea if that bark means yes or no," Mary told it. "Very well, I shall start with a simpler question. Are you a girl dog or a boy dog?" The dog whined hopefully and put its head to one side. Oh no, Mary was realizing what it wanted. "I'm saving the other piece of meat for later. We're going to play first. Do you think you would like that?" The dog's tail wagged a little. Mary smiled. "I think you're a girl dog," she declared, "and I think I shall call you Jemima. Come on, Jemima, let's play." Mary started to run. The dog hesitated for a moment and then raced after her. It was the first time that Mary had run outside since she'd arrived at Misselthwaite. She charged across the muddy ground. The dog bounded behind her, veering to one side and then overtaking her, leading the way down the twisting paths that curved through the trees. Mary raced after her. Her breath was coming in pants as she drew in deep lungfuls of fresh air. It was so wonderful to have someone who wanted to be with her. Water and mud splashed up from the puddles, and for the first time in ages, she felt properly alive. A laugh burst out of her. The dog barked, and she barked back. The dog danced around her, barking 3 times, so Mary copied her, spinning around, her face lifted to the sky. The dog bounded to the bottom of a very high wall that was almost completely hidden by a curtain of creepers, and then disappeared. Mary stopped in surprise and ran to where she had been. She spotted a small hole under the wall. The dog must have crawled through it. "Jemima," she called. Nothing happened. Mary felt a wave of disappointment at losing her friend. She was about to turn to go away when suddenly the dog's head reappeared. The dog barked as if she were encouraging Mary to follow. "I can't follow you through there, Jemima," said Mary with a grin. "That hole is much too small for me." "Is this where you live, then?" The dog whined. Mary glanced up. The high wall had a thick covering of ivy on the top and a tree growing right beside it. What's on the other side, she wondered. Maybe I could climb up and see? Just then there was the sound of that bell. It was ringing in the distance as Mrs. Medlock's voice called faintly, "Mary! Mary!" "Pfft, oh, bother," thought Mary crankily. Mrs. Medlock's shouts and the bell ringing grew more insistent. Mary sighed and looked at the dog. "Tomorrow," she promised, putting the rest of the sandwich down on the ground for it to eat. "I will see you then, Jemima. Make sure you come." The dog barked, and Mary smiled as she turned away. Her heart felt much lighter as she skipped back to the house. She'd made a friend at Misselthwaite at last.